Please forgive a brief interruption for a little channel business. We are very near to having 50 subscribers, and when that happens, we are going to have a virtual silver conference or something. 25 members of the George Silver Society on Facebook have expressed an interest in participating, but I don't know how many others there may be who are interested or where in the world they are. So, whether or not you are on the George Silver Society Facebook page, Howard, yes, thank you. If you are interested in participating, please go to the Brief Paradoxes channel page. That's just by clicking Brief Paradoxes under this video, and you'll go to the channel page. If you look there, you will find an email address. Send an email expressing your desire to participate. Michael is working with me to design a questionnaire that will help us work out time zones and preferred platforms and the like, which we will send to you as soon as it is ready. What it's looking like, as I survey the likely participants so far, is late evening for Europe, various afternoon times for the Americas, and early morning for Australia and environs. Now, if we have anybody in East Asia, that obviously adds a whole level of complication, but we need to know before we can plan. What it looks like to me probably is that we're going to need a weekend day to avoid conflicting with people who are at work or who are getting ready to leave for work. But nothing is set in stone yet, nor will it be until we have questionnaires out and responses back. In other news, we will probably be starting virtual silver lessons based on Stephen Hand's curriculum very soon. Possibly as soon as the next episode. Also in the pipeline, we have episodes on George Silver the man. What do we know for sure? What are the speculations out there? And also, Silver in his context, political, religious, military, cultural. And now to return to our regular programming. The four grounds or principles of that true fight at all manner of weapons are these four: judgment, distance, time, place. The reason whereof these four grounds or principles be the first and the chiefest are the following: because through judgment you keep your distance, through distance you take your time, through time you safely win or gain the place of your adversary. The place being won or gained, you have time safely either to strike, thrust, ward, close, grip, slip, or go back, in the which time your enemy is disappointed to hurt you or to defend himself, by reason that he hath lost his true place. The reason that he hath lost his true place is by the length of time through the number of his feet, to which he is of necessity driven by that will-be agent. George Silver, from Brief Instructions upon My Paradoxes of Defense. From Paul Wagner's glossary in his book, Masters of Defense. Place, the position where you can offend your opponent without having to make any motions of your foot. Greetings, fencers of the interwebs. My name is William Kilmer, Will or Bill to most people, and I fence at Worcester Historical Swordsmanship here in Worcester, Massachusetts. Do you have a moment to talk about the true fight of George Silver? Today we will finish our first pass at George Silver's Grounds and Governors with a look at the last of the grounds, place. Based on what I have seen in the George Silver Society comments section and elsewhere, I suspect that most of us who have studied Silver's fight would, if asked, come up with a definition not too different from Paul Wagner's in his glossary for Master of Defense. Place, the position where you can offend your opponent without having to make any motions of your foot. And for many uses of place in Silver's books, this definition would serve well enough. And frankly, this video is a little late because I spent a good deal of time trying to shoehorn all of Silver's uses of place into this definition, because Paul Wagner gets so much right and has been such an important influence on my development and understanding of Silver's system. But as I worked on this series on grounds and governors and starting looking closely at the text, my confidence in this definition was disturbed. It would have been nice if Mr. Silver had included a glossary and a definition of all these terms himself. And the next time I see him, I plan to ask him about that. However, until then, we are left to derive our understanding of Silver's place from the use of the term in his books. Just looking at the excerpt from Governors we read a moment ago, we can see that our working definition is in trouble from the very start and on more than one count. First of all, let us dispose of the question of whether being in the place always implies the potential or desirability of offensive action. If we look at the Governor's passage from Brief Instructions, we see immediately that not all of the actions that may be done having won or gained the place are offensive. Strike, thrust, grip, and close are indeed offensive actions, but what of ward, slip, and go back? Surely those are defensive actions? Wait a minute. Wait a cotton picking minute. Defensive. But wait, it gets worse. There is the matter of the moving of the foot. Strike, thrust, ward, or taking the grip might be done without moving the foot or feet, though all may be done to advantage with foot movements, at least on many occasions. But we are told that having won or gained the place, we may also safely close, slip, or go back. I don't think we can do any of those without moving our feet, or at least one of them. Awkward. Now, what about winning and gaining the place? How do we understand those actions? Here, fortunately, we are back on pretty secure ground, at least as far as any interpreter of Silver of whom I am aware. Gaining the place most often refers to the opponent's offensive action which has gone awry. He has gained you the place by his coming in. Though a combatant may also gain the place by the maladroit defensive action of their opponent as well. Gaining the place is the equivalent of an unforced error in tennis, and Wagner's definition here serves us very well. Gaining the place, if you achieve the place due to the motions initiated by your opponent. Thank you, Paul Wagner. I think that's perfect. Now, winning the place is an error forced on the opponent by the combatant through the combatant's own actions. For example, a combatant might win the place by a false, which causes their opponent to make their space too wide toward themselves in due time. Or, as Silver says, by taking the point, that is, by making an action on the blade of the opponent to open the line. Or through some other action, a traverse in an unexpected direction that catches the opponent leaning, for example. As Paul Wagner's glossary puts it, winning the place, achieving the place through a motion initiated by you, which pretty much covers it. Though I do not from a number of his statements, think that Silver ever considers the combatant who has the place won from them ever to be entirely blameless in this. When two men shall meet that have both the perfection in their weapons, against the best no hurt can be done. Otherwise, if by any device one should be able to hurt the other, then there were no perfection in the use of weapons. This perfection of fight being observed prevents both close fight and all manner of closes, grips, and wrestling, and all manner of such devices whatsoever. Brief Instructions, Chapter 4, Section 17. And in perfect fight, two never strike or thrust together, because they never suffer place nor time to perform it. Paradoxes of Defense, Paradox 7. So, place does not necessarily imply an opportunity for offensive action, nor does it necessarily imply a location within measure. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And since Silver does not define the word, he must of necessity believe that his reader will apprehend the meaning Silver intends. So, place. It comes into English at about 1200 from medieval Latin and Old French, which have lifted it from the Greek. Place has sharp elbows and eventually displaces a couple of English words, stead and stow, though these words are preserved in place names such as homestead and Barstow. Place also expands the number of its meanings to around 8 or 10, depending on what dictionary you consult. French needs at least 3 words to cover all of the different meanings that English finds in the word place. And as English nouns tend to do, place takes the opportunity to also become a verb. So, Silver has chosen a rich word that would resonate with speakers of Latin, French, or Greek, and that has multiple English meanings. We talked in a previous episode about how the Elizabethans loved to play with the different resonances of the words that they choose, which makes a kind of sense because Silver wants this word place to do a lot of things. I first began to suspect that Silver was up to something with his word choice because of my theatrical background. Theater, in the high Middle Ages, the mystery and the morality plays moved out of the chancel of the churches. I'll link these titles in the description below. Moved out of the chancels of the churches into the open air, first to the church steps, and then theater took over the town square, or plaza, in front of the church. You caught that right, huh? Plaza, same root word as place in both Latin and Greek. And in the great religious festivals in England, when we look at the scripts that have been preserved, we see that even though the dialogue is in English, of a sort, the stage directions were sometimes in Latin, because of course they did. And the place transfers into English stage directions when those stage directions are moved into the vernacular. Thank you, Howard. These were amateur theatricals, performed and supported by the secular guilds. That is why they were moved out of the church proper. Despite the rise of professional players in England, these amateur religious plays continued to be offered into Silver's lifetime, into the 1570s, when the conflicts attendant upon the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation caused the authorities finally to suppress them. So, what was the place in these festival plays? It was the town square, around which the domiciles or mansions of the principal characters were erected. We don't have any surviving English examples of drawings or plans, but from the descriptions we have, the form seems to have been pretty similar across Western Europe. The guilds spent a lot of money and thought on designing and building elaborate temporary structures as the homes or mansions for the various characters. The prestige of the guilds was involved, after all, and anybody who has ever been connected with amateur theatricals can, I am sure, relate. So, some of the audience sat in the medieval equivalent of bleachers around the square or in adjacent streets, but from any given seat, some of the mansions would be obscured because it was in the round. So many, probably most of the audience, actually stood in the square, the place, and moved around the space following the action. But in order for the interactions of the characters in the play to occur, one or more than one of those characters had to leave their mansions and either travel across the place to another mansion or meet another character or characters in the place and interact with them there. The standing audience has either to get out of the way or be gotten out of the way of the player's movements, and then the audience reforms in a new configuration in the place to view the next action. No location within the place belongs to the audience at all times or to the players at all times. And of course, during the times when the play is not being presented, the place, the plaza, the square, ceases to be a place of performance at all and reverts to its other uses. The mansions are packed up and stored away for next year, as the square becomes a place for a farmer's market, or a religious procession, or a civic ceremony, or mostly just a common way for everybody and his sheep to traverse in the course of getting from here to there. The place, therefore, in English is highly malleable. At one time used for this, and another occupied by that. The place is not just a space or a location. It is an event, an occasion. This usage of place is still alive in English as at a breakup. This is not the place for you to make a scene. Because the restaurant was carefully chosen so that making a scene would be awkward. Or at Thanksgiving dinner, this is not the place for you to call out Uncle Bob on his politics. Because we only have to put up with Uncle Bob once a year, and he'll go to sleep before the football is over if we just keep filling his glass. Of course, the response may be, "This is exactly the place to make a scene," or, "There is no way I am going to sit at my place at that table and listen to Uncle Bob spout his reactionary horse hockey unchallenged." So, my provisional definition, if you've been following along, the place, an occasion, temporally and spatially of unfettered agency, when the combatant may make an offensive or defensive action without the possibility of interference from their opponent. But Silver makes it clear in Paradoxes by repeated assertion that he believes that both combatants may simultaneously be in the place. See Paradox 3, Paradox 4, Paradox 6, Paradox 7, and Paradox 12. Or that at least they may believe themselves both to be in the place. The place gives you choices, but be careful how you choose, because sometimes you are in a bad place. Paradox. Sometimes there is no good option that keeps your times true and keeps you safe, but the get the hell out of Dodge option. Or so it seems to me Silver thinks. My takeaway from reading and rereading Silver is revelation. Silver hates doubles. More than anything else about the rapier that he hates, and he hates a lot of things about the rapier, he hates the way that the rapier was taught in his day, basically because, in his view, the way it was taught ensured doubles, provoked doubles, promoted doubles. And if he had had a term for the afterblow, I believe Silver would have hated those two. Yet, the acceptance of doubles seems to be baked into Saal fencing. I have attended broadsword tournaments where the final two doubled 5 or 6 times on the last point before one of them finally got a clean hit and got out safely. No names. They're both friends of mine. But any rational rule set would have disqualified them both, at least after the second instance. Does the place or true place depend upon the objective of the moment? Is it thus that Silver says that two may thrust or strike together and both be in the place to successfully offend the other? Whereas if one of them had slipped or warded, that one would have gained the place and the other be denied the place, as the fighter making the defensive action would succeed in his objective while the other would be denied theirs. Does proper understanding of the use of place depend upon judgment? And therefore poor judgment may place the combatant in a place they would rather have avoided. I am thrown back upon the interrelation of the grounds. Judgment, distance, time, and place, all interconnected to permit the combatant to fight safe. But judgment is the first ground and the first governor for a reason. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. When I began this channel, I deluded myself that I could present Silver in a way that would be uncontroversial and just stick to the main tenets of the system as they are usually understood, leave the debatable points to others. That hasn't quite gone as planned. It is almost like Mr. Silver is being deliberately provocative. Well, for now, if you are having fun, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and send us an email if you want to join the virtual symposium. See you on the flip side. What if I put it right there, like that? Does that work for you? Yeah, well, I think it might. I think it might do. This is the usual disclaimer. I have said elsewhere, I am not an expert. I am a student. And I have drawn heavily on the works of others to inform my understanding. First of all, of course, upon the works of George Silver himself, but also on the works of many instructors and scholars. And if I have drawn upon your work and you feel that I have misrepresented you, slighted you, misattributed you, or in any other way offended, please accept my apologies, let me know, and let me fix it as we go forward. You have been absolutely instrumental in improving my understanding of George Silver's True Fight. Any errors or omissions are, of course, entirely my own. Thank you. See you on the flip side.